Hello viewers, my name is Adebanke. You are welcome to today's class. Here we'll be taking a look at genetics and heredity. And the focus of today's lecture will be looking at DNA structure, Mendelian inheritance, genes, chromosome, and genetic disorders. So let's get started. Introduction to genetics and heredity. When you think of genetics, what comes to your mind? You think of DNA, you think of some specific traits that some family has while other family don't exhibit those particular traits. So genetics is the study of how traits are inherited from one generation to another. So what are these specific traits? You see in some families they are tall, the members of the families are tall, while in other families the members of the families are short. So genetics comes to play in that part. So when we talk about heredity, heredity refers to passing of this trait through DNA from parent to offspring. So this heredity are being passed from parent to offspring. For example, maybe a parent has a full hair, so that particular trait can also be expressed in the offspring. The next slide, we'll be looking at DNA. So there's no way we can talk about genetics and heredity that we won't come to look at what DNA is. When we say DNA, is a term that is known as deoxyribonucleic acid, and deoxy means without oxygen, while ribo means ribose, that means a 5-carbon sugar. The nuclei, DNA is found in the nucleus of cells, while the acid, DNA is acidic in nature. Why? Because it has phosphate group. So let's take a look at what DNA structure is in the next slide. So DNA structure is as simple as this. You might have come across what the structure looks like, but this is like a reminder. Just think of a ladder. A ladder has two long strands and mini strands in between. So DNA structure is just like a ladder, but the only difference is that DNA structure are twisted. So DNA is made up of nucleotide. The nucleotide are here, they are located here, and they are adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. It forms a double helix with complementary base pairs. So these bases they form complementary base pairs, whereby adenine form a complementary base pair with thymine, and guanine form a complementary base pair with cytosine. So DNA carries genetic instructions for cell and heredity. The next slide, Mendelian inheritance. So the father of genetics is known as Mendel, and he carried out experiments using pea plants to for us to understand what genetics is. So he's known as the father of genetics. So he come about two laws, which are laws of segregation and law of independent assortment. So the law of segregation means one allele from each parent is inherited, while the law of independent assortment means a particular gene for different traits are inherited independently. So how did he come across this? Let's look at the experiment in the next slide. So he used a pea plant. He crossed a tall plant with a short plant. So let's look at it, crossing a tall plant and a short plant. So you have TT, then TT, so in this first generation, recommend then experiment showed that all the plants in the first generation are tall. So we have the dominant and the recessive. The dominant is more expressed and the recessive is just like a carrier, is not expressed. So in the first generation, all the plants are tall. But in the second generation, it tried to cross them again, and you notice that some plants are tall while a particular one is short. This is what we have here. This highlighted one shows that this particular plant is short. So that's what it used to explain dominant and recessive. So we are moving on to genetic disorders. Okay, we are moving on to genes and chromosome. A gene is a segment of DNA that codes for a specific trait. Gene is a part of DNA that codes for a particular trait, and this gene is located on chromosome. When we say chromosome, they look like thread. They are thread-like structures that are made of DNA and protein. And in human, there are 46 chromosomes. We have 23 pairs. 22 pairs of chromosomes are known as the autosomes, while one pair is known as the sex chromosome. That's why we have the XY for male and the XX for female. So this brings about what we should understand by genetic disorders. So genetic disorders has to do with a change in DNA sequence, which is also known as mutation. It can be an addition of a sequence or a removal of sequence. The change in DNA sequence and is known as mutation. In the next slide. So we have types of genetic disorder. We have the single gene disorder, which is sickle cell anemia. We have the chromosomal disorder, for example, the Down syndrome. And we have the multifactorial disorder. This kind of disorder can be caused by gene alongside with environmental factors like diabetes. So the explanation of the change in sequence is in the following slide. So let's take a look at it. So for sickle cell, in the normal cell, we see these codons, GAG, CTC, and this codon, the DNA, is transcribed to RNA, and RNA translates this codon to protein, which brings about the trait that is expressed. So in normal cell, we see that this codon, this DNA codes for glutamic acid. But in normal cell, because of a change in one of the codon, you can see GAG in normal cell is being changed. There's a change in A to T, and CTC, there's a change to CAC. And if there's a change like that, it will lead to another result. That's just the interpretation. Imagine you mixing two colors, you have red and blue, and it gives purple, and you just change maybe the blue to another color, it will give an entire result. So this is what mutation is all about. So you see a change in A to T and a change in T to A will bring about a result that is different from the normal cell, and that is known as the mutant protein. You see, instead of this DNA coding for glutamic acid, is coding for valine. So that's what happens in sickle cell. But in Down syndrome, these are chromosomes. We see that looking at chromosome 21, instead of two chromosomes, we have three chromosomes, and that's what is known as trisomy 21. So that's what happens in Down syndrome, which causes developmental delay in children. So looking at diabetes, that's type 1. We have two types of diabetes. We have type 1 and type 2. But in type 1 is lack of insulin or insulin insensitivity. So looking at these genes, you see the IDDM, that's insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So the carrier, these ones highlighted in pink, they are the one that are at risk of type 1 diabetes. So it's as simple as this. This can be an hereditary disease if a parent carries this particular genes. That's the IDDM7, IDDM12, 13, and other IDDM17. So this particular gene have been passed to offspring, and it can make the offspring to be at risk of having diabetes later in life. So we'll be taking a look at some past questions just to deepen our understanding. So let's see if we can answer them together. Hello students, let's take a look at these questions. These questions are just from what we had in the lecture, just to see if we understood what the brief lecture was all about. So what is the basic unit of heredity? Why we say the basic unit of heredity? Is it chromosome? Option A. Option B, cell. Option C, gene. And option D, protein. The basic unit of heredity, as discussed in the lecture, is gene. It's not chromosome. Chromosome is a thread-like structure that contains both gene and DNA and protein. But cell is the basic unit of life. When we talk about gene, it has to do with passing specific trait from parent to offspring, which brings about the term heredity. And protein is the last, is what DNA codes for, like the result. So the basic unit of heredity is gene, option C. Question 2. DNA is made up of how many types of nitrogenous bases? Option A, 2, option B, 3, option C, 4, and option D, 5. So DNA is made up of 4 nitrogenous bases. If you can recall from the lecture, I made mention of adenine, thymine, cytosine, and guanine. So DNA is made up of 4 nitrogenous bases. Question 3. Which of the following base pairs with adenine? Option A, guanine, option B, cytosine, option C, thymine, and option D, uracil. So the base that pairs with adenine is thymine, and it's not guanine, it's not cytosine. Cytosine pairs with guanine. So, and uracil is found in RNA. So, adenine pairs with thymine. That's the correct answer, option C. Who is considered the father of genetics? During the course of the lecture, I made mention of the father of genetics when I was talking about the Mendelian inheritance. The father of genetics is Greco Mendel. I made mention that he did experiments letting us to understand some genes that are being dominant and recessive when he used pea plants for his experiments. So it is not Charles Darwin, because Charles Darwin did something related to theory of evolution. Watson Crick, they are the one that discovered DNA, while Thomas Magan still worked on genetics, but the focus for this question is Greco Mendel. So Greco Mendel is the father of genetics. Question 5. In humans, how many chromosomes are found in a typical body cell? In humans, we have 23 pairs of chromosomes. So how many chromosomes are found? So 23 pairs, that's 23 pair means 2 times 2, that's 46. So it is not 44, 22, option D, 48. The correct answer is 46, option B. Question 6. What is the shape of a DNA molecule? Option A, straight ladder. Option B, double helix. Option C, spiral square. And option D, circle. I showed you the structure of DNA during the course of the lecture. Is like a twisted ladder. Ladder is in a straight form, in as much as it looks so similar like a ladder, but DNA structure is in a twisted form. So it has a double helix strand. So the shape of a DNA molecule is double helix strand. Option B. Question 7. Which of the following is a chromosomal disorder? We discuss about genetic disorder whereby there's a mutation in a DNA sequence. This mutation can be a removal or an addition of a codon, so which can code for another protein entirely. So let's take a look at the question again. Which of the following is a chromosomal disorder? Is it malaria? Option A. Option B, sickle cell anemia. Option C, Down syndrome. And option D, kwashiorkor. When we say chromosomal, I made mention of trisomy 21, which is in Down syndrome. So the correct answer is C, Down syndrome. An individual with two identical alleles for a trait is said to be. So look at the keywords very well. An individual, what is an allele? Allele is different from variant of genes. So an individual with two identical, we are talking about the same alleles for a trait, is said to be, is it heterozygous? Hetero means more than one, right? B, hybrid. C, homozygous. And D, dominant. So the correct answer is homo, since homo means one, and in the question they are asking an individual with the same identical allele for a trait. So the correct answer is C, homozygous. Option C. Question 9. What type of inheritance shows one allele completely masking another? Option A, codominance. Option B, incomplete dominance. Option C, Mendelian dominance. Option D, polygenic inheritance. So when we talk about the type of inheritance that shows one allele completely masking another, so we are talking about a complete dominance, and that complete dominance is also known as Mendelian dominance. So the correct answer is C, Mendelian dominance. How many sex chromosomes do humans have? So during the course of the lecture, we made mention of humans having 23 pairs of chromosomes. So I said 22 pairs are autosomes, while one pair is known as sex chromosome. So one pair, that's times 2, that's 2. So how many sex chromosomes do humans have? Option A, 2. Option B, 22. Option C, 46. And option D, 23. Option A, 2 is the correct answer. Question 11. Genes are located on A, ribosomes, B, mitochondria, C, chromosomes, D, nuclei. Genes are located, during the course of lecture, I showed you chromosomes, which is like a thread-like structure, and genes are located on chromosome. It is not ribosomes, that's the site of protein synthesis, mitochondria, powerhouse, but chromosome is the answer. Option C, chromosome is the correct answer. Question 12. Which of the following is an example of a recessive genetic disorder? A genetic disorder question is coming up again. So which of the following is an example of recessive? Recessive means like a parent is a carrier, and this particular gene is now expressed in the offspring. So an example of a recessive genetic disorder here, let's look at the option. Option A is a HIV. HIV is a viral disease. Is it tuberculosis? Tuberculosis is a bacterial disease. Is it sickle cell anemia? Yes, it's the correct answer. Then measles is a viral disease. So the correct answer to this question is option C, sickle cell anemia. Question 13. The combination B, the capital B and small b, is an example of, you see, we have one is dominant, the small one is recessive. That's two different ones. So the combination of the capital B and small b is an example of heterozygous. That's more than one. So it is not homozygous or recessive, B homozygous dominant, C heterozygous, D pure breed. So the correct answer is heterozygous. Question 14. A change in the DNA sequence is called A, translation, B, mutation, C, replication, D, duplication. So if there is a change, you have a DNA sequence, at least a DNA is extracted. DNA can be gotten from human living organism, and you have the extract and you did your analysis and you see that there's a change in a DNA sequence, so which can result in, disease in other, even in small organism, like for example mosquito. If there's a change in their sequence, it can make them to be more, resistant to the commercial insecticides that are being used. So if there's a change of in DNA sequence, it is known as mutation. That means the gene is mutant, is different from the normal gene. And that means option B is the correct answer. Question 15. What does a gene code for? A, DNA, B, RNA, C, a trait, D, a protein. So this is the flow we have from DNA to RNA, then to protein. So this DNA carries the instruction, then this instruction is being transcribed to RNA, and this RNA receives this instruction and translates it to protein. So what does a gene code for? A gene code for a protein, and that determines the trait that is being expressed. So option D, protein, is the correct answer. Question 16. What determines the sex of a child? Option A, the mother's egg. Option B, the father's sperm. Option C, the uterus. Option D, the number of genes. So this question is asking what determines, in a family, if the offspring are all males, and in other families they have a mixture of both females and male, and in another family they just have males or true. So is it the father that determines the sex of the child? Is it the mother? So who actually determines the sex of the child? So the correct answer is the father's sperm. Why? Because male carried this chromosome X and Y, and for female is X and X. So female can only release or donate X chromosome no matter what, since they have X egg. But a father can either donate a X chromosome if a mother donates a X and a father donates another X, the sex of the child will be female. But in a situation where X is constant for female, they only donate X, and the father sperm donates Y or is a carrier of Y chromosome, that means the sex of the child will be male. So what determines the sex of the child from this option? You can see now that B, the father's sperm, is the correct answer, option B. Question 17. In Mendel's experiment, what kind of traits reappeared in the F2 generation? If you can recall from the lecture, when Mendel carried out experiments crossing a tall pea plant with short pea plant, we see that the first generation, the first filial generation, the plants are all tall. That means they have the tall gene is dominant. But in the F2 generation, when it was crossed, when the F1 generation was crossed, we see that some plants have, they are short. That means the recessive gene is coming to play out. So what kind of traits reappeared in F2 generation? Is it dominant? B, mutant? C, recessive? D, codominant? The correct answer is recessive, option C. Question 18. Which of these is not a nitrogen base in DNA? In DNA, said from the lecture, I made mention of 4 nitrogenous bases: adenine, thymine, guanine, and cytosine. But in RNA, we can find uracil. Uracil is present in RNA, the nitrogenous base in RNA. So which of these is not a nitrogenous base in DNA? So it's clear that option C, uracil, is not a nitrogen base in DNA. That's option C is the correct answer. Question 19. What carries the genetic information from parents to offspring? Option A, hormones. Hormones are chemical messengers. Option B, genes. Option C, organs. And option D, enzymes. So the correct answer is genes. It's as simple as that. So what carries the genetic information from parents to offspring? The correct answer is gene, option B. Question 20. A condition where one gene influences many traits is called option A, polygenic inheritance, option B, pleiotropy, option C, incomplete dominance, and option D, chromosomal disorder. So when we talk about a condition where one gene influences, many traits, is known as pleiotropy. For example, in the sickle cell anemia, we see that a change in one particular gene actually influence the trait in an offspring, so which lead to a sickle cell hemoglobin. So that's the illustration for that. So a condition where one gene influences many traits. So that one gene influences, poor oxygen, pain, and the shape of the hemoglobin itself. So that particular one gene leads to alteration in that particular gene influences many traits. So the correct answer to this question is pleiotropy. Option B is the correct answer. Thank you for staying with us in this class. If you have any question or any topic you want us to teach, you can drop them in the comment section. See you in the next class. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sure you enjoyed the content you just watched. To see more episodes as that, preparing you for your oncoming exams, smash the subscribe button on this channel right now and visit the playlist that we've made for you, covering over 50 type of different exams, including JAMB, WAEC, Cacao, NEET, IALT, and the likes like that. Also, in every video you watch, we have the link to our apps where you can download on Google Play Store and Apple Play Store and practice hundreds of past questions for free.